Why do we tell stories? For some it's pure entertainment, for others it's a matter of life and death. Scheherazade in 1001 Night had to tell stories so she could live another night. Agota Kristof's protagonists have a similar reason for telling stories. For them it's to cope with tragedy. Too painful to say as it is, so making up lies is a coping mechanism. It's a form of grieving. Hi everyone, thank you for watching this. In this video I discuss one of the most famous Hungarian novels of all time. The Notebook by Agota Kristof is part of a trilogy. The other two novellas are The Proof and The Third Lie. They all make up the Book of Lies, or Twins trilogy in English translation. It's no exaggeration that this novel blew me away. Its storytelling is so unique and so surprising and mesmerizing that it was a pure joy to read. First, let me tell you about the author. Agota Kristof was born in 1935 in Hungary and fled to Switzerland when she was 21 and mainly wrote in French, and she died in 2011. This trilogy was written in French, not Hungarian. Her name sounds like Agata Christie, the English crime writer, but that's pure coincidence, I think. The Notebook, the first in the trilogy, won her the European Prize for Literature in 1986, as well as Austrian and Swiss prizes in literature in 2001 and 2008, respectively. The three novellas discussed here were published between 1986 and 91. The English translation appeared in 97. Please don't confuse this novel with The Cheap Romance by Nicholas Sparks. This is a very different beast. First, let me summarize the story. The Notebook, the first in the trilogy, is narrated by a twin, Lucas and Klaus. Their names have the same letters, an anagram. Two people morphed into one, two halves joined together. They do everything together. We meet them when their mother takes them to their grandma's house so that she can look after them during the war. They live with their grandmother called Witch, and she in turn is called the twins Sons of Bitch. They live in an unnamed town in an unnamed country, but most crucially in the last house in the city or country, so close to the border. Hungary as a nation is unique in Europe. Its language has no relations with the dominant language families around it. Slavic people to the south, Latin to the east, and Germanic to the west. Hungarian or Magyar is a member of Finno-Ugric, part of the Uralic language family. It's related to Finnish and Estonian. Linguistically, Hungary is on the fringe, the last house close to the border, so to speak. Here's a quote. "The frontier has been rebuilt. It is now impassable. Our country is surrounded by barbed wire. We are completely cut off from the rest of the world." End quote. Of course, this refers to the communist period in Hungary, but you can also feel the sense of isolation of the people from their ancestral place or spiritual past. In a sense, that is Hungary if you think in terms of language. Okay, that's where the twins live, in a hazy world of dreams. They also live on the fringe of time. Time too has borders like space. Borders are broken times into pieces, just like Earth is broken into countries. Time borders are shrouded in mists because memory is always hazy and demarcation is less visible. The World War II is raging, then communist rule emerging. The twins have their own survival to care. They do everything to make sure they survive. This means lying, manipulating, blackmailing, and even killing. You meet them as small kids, but by the end, you realize that they are more than kids. Less innocent, certainly not naive, but rather like manipulative grown-ups. You're shocked, but also amused. Why? Because they are kids. No matter how terrible they are, you judge them as kids. That's why everyone's mistakes are easily forgiven if happened in their youth. But we don't forget adults making mistakes. Kristof plays on this idea beautifully. The second novella, titled The Proof, is narrated by one of the twins, Lucas, who lives alone most of the time. He works on a farm and plays music in bars to earn enough to survive. He also falls in love with an older woman who looks like his mother. He shelters a woman who got pregnant after having sex with her own father. Lucas treats her like a wife and the child like his own son. He divides his time between a few people as if he runs an orchestra playing all the instruments by himself. For example, he commutes between, or rather juggles between a priest, a woman with a child, her child, and the party secretary, a female librarian, a bookseller, and a few more. His connection is like the web that connects all these people together, so he moves between these people as if attached to a string. He compensates his own lack of family with the priest as a father figure. They play chess together, which is an important pastime in Hungary. Yasmin, the single mother, as wife, and Mati, her son, as his son, Peter as friend, Clara as mother and lover. but none of them is enough for him. So he keeps his notebooks, which is the first novella in the trilogy. He safeguards them. He revises them from time to time. The notebook is life story, his life, his missing twin brother. It is in the notebook that he keeps him alive. This is quite shamanistic in the sense that the spirit of those departed can be accessed and kept alive by those still remaining. In the 18th century, there was a movement among intellectuals in Hungary trying to find where their ancestors had come from. Many Hungarians would travel to Central Asia, India, Mongolia to find their lost ancestors. Hungarians weren't alone in this. In my video on the Polish epic Pan Tadeusz, I discussed how the Polish intellectuals did the same by connecting their ancestry with the last Iranian tribe called the Sarmatians. The third book, titled The Third Lie, puts everything upside down. It's narrated by Lucas, or Klaus, or perhaps it's the same person who returns to his home country to find his brother. They meet, but his brother denies knowing him. We learn that the twins came from a well-off middle-class family, but their lives were shattered by a tragic revenge. It also tells that the first two novellas were lies, fantasy to cope with loneliness. Quote, "All this is a lie. I know very well that I was already alone in this town with grandmother, that even I only fantasized that there were two of us, me and my brother, in order to endure the unbearable solitude." The first novella is perhaps the best and the most original, and the second and third novellas merely try to explain the first novel. One of the funniest scenes is when the grandmother, on the verge of death, tells the children that she has some treasure buried somewhere, and as she tries to give them direction, before she even manages a sentence, the kids tell her that they know where the treasure is. Grandma is shocked, and the kids tell her that yes, the treasure is buried in her husband's grave. Her visit to the cemetery wasn't to remember her dead husband, but to watch the treasure. The kids run the show, the real mastermind behind so many events in the story. The first novel is narrated by we, then the second novel is by he, and the third novel by the other he. There is no I. Proust said that our past is sometimes the history of someone else. Agota Kristof reiterates that your past is not your past, it is someone else. You make that person up. Also, number 3 might be important. It's a trilogy, but many examples of 3 recurring in the novels. For example, Lucas, the protagonist, forgets to sell her produce for 3 days. The little girl forgets to tell Lucas about going to visit the priest for 3 days. In Hungarian mythology, the world is divided into 3. Upper, where the gods live, middle, where we live and everybody else, and under, where bad things live. The first and second novels keep your emotions intact because they are told in a very cold, objective tone, without any emotions whatsoever, as if a scientist is describing the events. But the third one is packed with so much emotion, that so much sadness, that it kind of breaks your heart. But it's wonderful and beautiful. I guess when there's tragedy in the family, those survivors try to make up a story to heal their wounds. So the first and second novels were made-up tales after the tragedy. And the third one, we learned that the mother actually killed the father because he had cheated on her. In the process, she had also injured her son, Lucas. And the second son, Klaus, is now looking after her. When Lucas does come back and visit him, he refuses to acknowledge him. Lucas commits suicide. Here's a quote. "Physical wounds don't matter when I receive them, but if I had to inflict them on someone else, that would wound me in a way I couldn't bear." It made me think about our own history or our own past. If you think about it, we try to construct a narrative, our own life for ourselves, but most crucially for the society. We tell our stories in a way that hides certain things, exaggerates certain things, and even lie in certain ways. So when it comes to our own stories, it seems that we invent, modify, edit our own past in a way that we think represents us better. So the novel basically deals with this idea of trauma and tries to spin it in a way that is more digestible. Memory is pain, pain is memory. As Tolstoy once said, life is a dream and death is like waking up. The twins write their stories in a notebook to keep their childhood dreams alive, keep them together, create an alternative reality, to alter their past, to alter their shattered dreams. Quote, "No book, no matter how sad, can be as sad as life." The story is told in an objective, impersonal, and almost autistic tone. There is zero emotion in the language. It reads like a history book. Also, the narrative is broken down into small sections, and each section has a specific title. This gives it a more scientific or non-fiction vibes to the story. The language is simple, bare bones, no moral judgment, chilling, tragic events described in statements like a script for a play or a movie. Here's a quote. "You will forget. Life is like that. Everything goes in time. Memories blur. Pain diminishes. I remember my wife as one remembers a bird or a flower." The twins don't understand morality in terms of good and evil, but more in terms of survival. They help people not because it's a good thing to do, but because they need their help. They lie, they kill, they manipulate, they blackmail people to get what they want. They grow up to survive, like the Frankenstein's monsters. They have no feelings, no emotions. In some parts you feel the twin kids are scientists. For example, in one scene, they go out to beg on the street, not to get food, but to observe people and learn how it feels to beg. I couldn't help but notice a certain similarity with the Marxian notion of materialism here. Then when I googled, I found an article written by Slavoj Žižek, a neo-Marxian intellectual from Slovenia, about this novel. He writes, "I would love to be an ethical monster without empathy, doing what is to be done in a weird coincidence of blind spontaneity and reflexive distance, helping others while avoiding their disgusting proximity. With more people like this, the world would have been a pleasant place in which sentimentality would be replaced by a cold and cruel passion." End quote. The twins appear to be from a prehistoric time. Survival is first. Life has no meaning. Love doesn't exist, and morality is futile. Just survival, pure and simple. But the weirdest thing is, it is the notebook, diary, stories. So ultimately in life, it's stories that give it meaning. Stories make cruelty of life bearable. Stories you read, stories you make to cope with life. Here's a quote. "I can't allow myself the luxury. I have lived with fear since I was a child." Okay, I cannot talk about this book without talking about the biggest elephant in the room, sex. There's a lot of it. Not romantic, but pure, simple physical necessity. As a war is raging, everything is simplified. Life is more complex in peacetime. During war, the purpose is to survive, a thing we have learned to do for maybe millions of years. The most basic of our instincts. Evolution goes through ebbs and flows, wars and then peace. During wars, poor people die, and peacetime, rich people get richer. Men are cruel in these novels, but so are women. In fact, the two main women in the novel are tyrannical, murderers, and abusive. Grandma runs the house like a dictator, and most likely had killed her husband. The twins' mother was the one who killed her husband and son in a rage. Of course, men perpetuate plenty of pain and horror. The most horrific story is that of a female neighbor who is so starved of sex that she has sex with animals, and when finally she is raped so many times by soldiers that she died happy. Another Hungarian novel to consider is Embers by Sándor Márai, which was published in 1942. It tells the story of two friends, two soldiers, Henrik and Konrad. Konrad had disappeared for 40 years, and when he reappears, Henrik invites him to his house for dinner. So the entire story takes place over a dinner, but it's not about two friends remembering the good old days or reminiscing their past pleasantly. Oh no, this meeting is much darker. It's a trial, it's a revenge, it's about confronting your past and remembering those who perished in the war and betrayal. At the end, everything turns to ash. Embers. Agota Kristof created stories to heal the past. Here, however, the two men bury the past. They burn it. Sometimes life is so messed up that the best way to deal with it is to burn it. I should warn you that Agota Kristof novellas can be confusing at times, heartbreaking, and as well as cruel. But I hope this video has helped you with the confusing parts, but also hopefully prepared you mentally to take up the challenge of reading it. It's a masterpiece of fiction and storytelling. It's one of those novels that as soon as you finish, you go back at the beginning and start reading again. That's exactly what I did.